The cancer journey is complex, scary, and unpredictable for everyone, especially those closest to you.
In early 2024, Princess Catherine quietly stepped back from public life. Weeks later, she revealed the truth. She was battling cancer. What followed was a year of treatment, resilience, and reflection. How did she navigate illness while protecting her family's privacy? What role did Prince William play in keeping their home life steady? And what does her return to royal duties signal for the road ahead? Let's examine the specifics. The routine of life within Kensington Palace continued as usual in the first few weeks of the year 2024. The royal family went through January in silence as they continued to get used to a new year full with engagements, school schedules, and well-planned appearances. However, a secret tempest had already started to build up behind the scenes. Princess Catherine, the Princess of Wales, was admitted to the London clinic on January 17th for what Kensington Palace described as a planned abdominal surgery. Shortly after the procedure, the palace issued a brief statement stating that the surgery had gone well and that the princess would stay in the hospital for up to 2 weeks. Officials stressed that the operation was not at the time related to cancer, even if its nature was not made public. Catherine's itinerary was cleared as anticipated. It wasn't expected that she would resume her public activities until after Easter. In order to better support his wife and their 3 young children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, Prince William also modified his royal obligations, taking a temporary hiatus. However, despite the royal family's long-standing reputation for privacy, public anxiety started to rise. Since there were no pictures or other facts, there was space for conjecture, and theories started to spread online and through other media outlets. By the beginning of February, Catherine's absence had spread throughout the country and was no longer merely a topic of conversation among royal watchers. Her last public appearance had been several weeks ago, and although the palace insisted that she was recovering nicely, the public remained apprehensive due to the absence of any personal updates or visual proof. On social media, rumors spread that ranged from plausible to ridiculous. Palace officials occasionally provided clarifications, but none were detailed enough to allay the mounting anxiety. The royal family remained silent in spite of the pressure. Prince William's return to work was further delayed, and the princess continued to be hidden from the public view. His sudden withdrawal from a memorial service for the late King Constantine of Greece on February 27th, citing a personal matter, only served to increase the rumors. Many realized that something much more serious than what had been suggested was happening behind the scenes. When the world stopped to watch a video message published by Kensington Palace on the afternoon of March 22nd, it became clear. Princess Catherine spoke directly to the people while seated in a plain chair and surrounded by the Windsor Gardens. She spoke in a cool, collected, yet clearly impassioned tone. She disclosed that post-operative tests had detected the presence of malignancy after her surgery. She had started a course of prophylactic chemotherapy on the recommendation of her medical staff. She clarified that she and Prince William had needed time to contemplate the news in privacy and carefully communicate it to their kids because the diagnosis had come as a huge shock. Despite just being a few minutes long, the film had an instant impact. It was spread on social media and by all of the main news outlets in a matter of hours. It was a national occasion as much as a personal announcement, and it immediately altered the perception of her absence. A surge of public concern, support, and sympathy took the place of the speculative activity. Messages flooded in from all around the Commonwealth, the United Kingdom, and beyond. Celebrities, politicians, cancer support groups, and regular people all showed their support for the princess. In a statement, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak commended her courage and emphasized the value of protecting her privacy as she recovers. Catherine's delivery struck a chord with many more than the content of the message. She came across as a mother and wife speaking from the heart, with no grandiosity or artificial staging. She praised the medical staff who were taking care of her, and acknowledged the anxiety and uncertainties that come with receiving a cancer diagnosis. Even though she was making good progress, she made it obvious that she required time, space, and ongoing seclusion to finish her treatment. There was a general change in tone as the public processed the impact of her declaration. Many public voices that had previously asked for greater transparency from the palace now appealed for compassion and restraint, and the previous weeks of conjecture were swiftly re-evaluated. Medical professionals and cancer charities also took advantage of the occasion to stress the value of privacy in the healing process and to urge anyone going through similar experiences to consult a doctor. The princess stayed at Windsor with her family in the days after her declaration. While continuing to assist Catherine at home, Prince William returned to some of his public engagements, visiting groups that support food redistribution and the British Red Cross. During his presentations, he acknowledged the situation briefly but sincerely, thanking supporters while maintaining the focus on the subjects he was advocating. Despite being kept out of the spotlight, the couple's kids started to quietly appear in national discourse. 10-year-old Prince George apparently understood the situation and provided his younger siblings with a feeling of stability. With as little interference from the media as possible, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis carried on with their school routines. Despite navigating one of the most emotionally taxing periods of their lives, the pair was making every effort to maintain stability at home, according to family sources. The atmosphere within Kensington Palace had shifted by the end of March. The royal family and the public now had a more open understanding, even if privacy was still strictly protected. The key difference was that the silence had been broken, according to Catherine's wishes. The princess had taken charge of the story in a way that was contemporary, truthful, and intensely personal, but there was no roadmap for what was to come. The emphasis progressively changed from shock to support as April drew near. Numerous patients saw Catherine's message as a source of inspiration and fortitude, and cancer support centers across reported an increase in outreach. Perhaps unwittingly, the princess had come to represent tenacity to those who shared her journey. However, despite the increased transparency, there were still unanswered questions. Which kind of cancer had been found? What is the expected duration of the treatment? Would she ever or this year return to royal duties? Kensington Palace's stance remained unwavering. Any updates would be provided when the time was right. The princess needed time to recuperate and concentrate on her health for the time being. The monarchy, which was founded on centuries of custom, was now in a strange place. Concern for a mother battling a personal struggle in a highly public environment kept the attention on Windsor's gates, rather than the customary interest in fashion or outward appearances. The royal family started subtly getting ready for the summer months around the end of April. The princess's return was not officially scheduled, therefore the family's itinerary was adjusted to accommodate her needs. Internally, the palace reorganized responsibilities, enabling William to carefully strike a balance between his private cares and his public duties. There was no sign that Catherine was under any pressure to make more appearances. Instead, other senior members, such as the Queen and the Princess Royal, handled royal engagements. The princess never left sight of him, but she never left his thoughts. Her absence affected not only the media, but also the occasions when her presence used to define public gatherings. Garden parties, charity visits, and community service projects all had a silent void, an implicit recognition that her recuperation was happening away from the spotlight. As April went on, Princess Catherine's recuperation continued to be the main focus. Even though Kensington Palace had ceased providing official updates when she sent a video message in late March, the lack of any new information was a subliminal indication that the family was continuing on their current path. There was no public or institutional pressure to expedite the princess's return, and it was not anticipated that she would return to duty before summer. In actuality, there had been a discernible change in the attitude of royal allies and watchers from interest and worry to tolerance and encouragement. During this time, Prince William resumed making more frequent public appearances, albeit always at a leisurely pace. Every event he went to was viewed through the prism of the family's inner struggles. Prince William welcomed employees and volunteers with warmth and poise when he visited a food distribution organization in early April. A conversation with a woman who gently asked him to look after his wife was one fleeting instance that stuck out. He gave a calm but earnest response, saying he would. The prince was a spouse navigating one of the most trying times in his personal life, but he also bore the obligations of a future monarch, as these brief interactions reminded the world. The goal of the royal household was to provide Princess Catherine and the kids with a stable, safe environment. The family mostly stayed in Windsor, which gave them greater seclusion than Kensington Palace, and enabled the princess to give her full attention to her care. According to reports, her parents, especially Carol Middleton, were supporting her, helping to look after the kids, and keeping the household normal. Although the palace did not publicly acknowledge this information, they were widely reported by reliable sources and consistent with past patterns of the family's behavior during difficult times. Media coverage was still intense as May progressed, but the story had leveled down. There was strong public support, and it was evident that the palace had succeeded in adjusting expectations by using a policy of carefully planned updates rather than continuous access. This time, the British media, which has often been criticized for its intrusive coverage, seemed to respect the plea for seclusion. News organizations concentrated more on Prince William's public appearances, the activities of other members of the royal family, and the wider ramifications of Catherine's medical journey, including the emphasis it placed on cancer prevention and awareness. Subtle indications of preparation for a potential return started to appear in mid-May. When and how the princess may return to public life, even for a short time, was a topic of internal deliberations, royal reporters reported. A date was not specified, though, and aides emphasized that Catherine's comfort and health would be the only factors determining when she would return. The emphasis was still on her health, as it had been from the start. Kensington Palace was cautious not to publish any pictures of the princess during this time. Her physical attributes, which were certainly impacted by chemotherapy, were regarded as personal affairs. The family's strategy was publicly commended by cancer care experts, who pointed out that letting a patient heal without feeling obligated to uphold a public persona might greatly reduce emotional strain. Although it was generally believed that she experienced adverse symptoms such as nausea, exhaustion, and weight fluctuations, there was no official confirmation, and none should have been. The palace's limits were generally respected by the people. By the end of May, excitement was building for the traditional June birthday parade of the king, Trooping the Color. The senior royals frequently make an appearance on the balcony at this important event on the royal calendar. There was much conjecture as to whether Princess Catherine would go. Insiders stated that her participation was being discussed, pending her treatment schedule and medical opinion, but no confirmation was given. Even the prospect of her showing up was interpreted as a positive indication that she was getting stronger again. That hope came true on June 15th, the day of Trooping the Color. Princess Catherine made her first public appearance after being diagnosed with cancer, much to the astonishment and happiness of many. She joined Queen Camilla, Prince William, King Charles III, and other high-ranking royals on the balcony of Buckingham Palace. She stood calmly and gracefully next to her family, wearing a beautiful gown and grinning broadly as she waved to the crowd. It was a message, not merely a symbolic homecoming. This was hardly a complete return to royal duties, as the princess had made clear. In order to provide continuity and reassurance without unduly straining her recuperation, her participation in Trooping the Color was characterized as a carefully managed step. The palace reaffirmed that she will continue to put her health first and that her treatment was ongoing. However, her return to public life, even if only momentarily, was enough to boost morale in the UK and outside. Messages of encouragement and support again flooded news outlets and social media in the days after her appearance. Commentators praised her for her calm and fortitude in attending such a prominent occasion while still receiving chemotherapy. The importance of what it signified for public comprehension, the fact that recovery is not a straight line, and the fact that being visible while sickness can be both empowering and humanizing were all emphasized by health experts. Even while her arrival on the balcony made headlines, the quiet minutes that followed were equally important. Following Trooping the Color, Princess Catherine virtually immediately went back to her private life, with no upcoming public appearances scheduled. Behind closed doors, she maintained her treatment, emphasizing family, rest, and the protracted healing process. With the quiet dignity that had come to define his duty at this time, Prince William continued to show up for scheduled events. Public expectations stabilized as July drew near. Since Catherine had only made one appearance and no obligations had been made, it was assumed that her schedule would be flexible. The royal family typically spends the summer at Sandringham or Balmoral, away from London. The season provided the Wales family with a great chance to detach from public life, prioritize their health, and spend quality time with their kids. As the princess began her prophylactic chemotherapy, that sense of space became increasingly more crucial. Although no formal medical information was made public, experts pointed out that this type of treatment frequently involves several rounds spread out over several months. Routine, rest, and strong family support are necessary for managing energy levels, immunological health, and mental well-being, and the royal household seemed dedicated to providing all three. Princess Catherine's declaration in March had started a discourse that was still reverberating in the background. Public awareness campaigns got fresh impetus, and involvement in cancer charities expanded. Her bravery in speaking up about her condition encouraged others to openly share their own experiences. Catherine had made many others feel less alone in their own struggles, even though she had no intention of becoming a spokeswoman. By mid-July, the princess returned for a quick visit, joining Prince William at the Wimbledon tennis finals. Her attendance was regarded as a public affirmation of her progress and a personal milestone, as the event had long been one of her favorites. She was sitting in the royal box, dressed in a light green outfit, and she seemed engaged, at ease, and peaceful. Despite being a brief excursion, the influence lasted. The palace, however, continued to exercise caution. It was still thought to be too soon to return to full-time royal employment. Aides stressed that her timetable would be determined only by medical advice and her personal comfort, as her treatment was not yet finished. Despite being well received by the audience, each presentation was viewed as a marker, a sign of advancement rather than pressure. What was most notable during this time was the royal family's careful balancing act between private care and public prominence. They handled it with compassion and discipline, even though it was not an easy task, especially with the media spotlight on them all the time. This time period was emotionally supported by the princess's courage, Prince William's subdued assistance, and their kids' serene fortitude. As the princess continued her treatment and the family withdrew from public life, the second part of the summer would provide additional time away from the limelight. Despite her absence, Princess Catherine's presence was nevertheless felt strongly throughout the nation due to her power, grace, and honesty. The royal family became increasingly less visible to the public as the second half of the summer of 24 approached. Princess Catherine continued to place a high value on relaxation and family time while undertaking her prophylactic chemotherapy treatment. The Wales family spent much of their time away from London during the school holidays, finding solace and seclusion at their Norfolk home, Anmer Hall. In addition to providing privacy, this rural getaway gave Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis a sense of normalcy. It also freed Catherine from the demands of everyday royal life to concentrate entirely on her health. The public continued to be involved even during the slower months. Throughout July and August, Kensington Palace did not release any official comments, public updates, or new pictures, although Catherine's Wimbledon visit earlier in the month had provided sufficient comfort. It was an outward manifestation of her fortitude and development. However, the fact that she would not be making any more appearances served as a reminder to her fans that her recuperation was still underway and that her treatment was far from finished. The princess's choice to stay out of the spotlight was a conscious attempt to keep control over how and when she was seen, a considerate strategy that complemented personal well-being and medical advice. Prince William kept a low-key public schedule during this period. He attended a few formal events, but his family was still his top priority. According to people close to the palace, William had taken on a major role in maintaining the rhythm of their home, making sure the kids remained grounded, the house remained peaceful, and Catherine had the daily assistance she required. Despite never being officially verified, These claims depicted a family secretly supporting one another. The public's focus started shifting back toward possible milestones in early September. The possibility that the princess will resume her royal responsibilities by the fall was once again raised. Journalists suggested that she might be nearing the conclusion of her chemotherapy round if her treatment schedule had been the same throughout the summer. However, Kensington Palace provided no timescale, as had become customary. Aides restated the statements made since March, stating that Catherine's health would always come first, and that any updates would only be given when she felt ready. Princess Catherine then delivered a second video message on September 9th, a few days after the annual summer holiday ended. Her tone was measured but upbeat, and the scene was straightforward. She declared the completion of her prophylactic chemotherapy. It was an extremely intimate statement filled with appreciation for her family, the public, and her medical team. She recognized the emotional toll the treatment had taken and the challenges of the previous months. She did, however, also talk of recovery, strength, and the gradual transition back to a more regular life. The reaction was swift and extensive. Congratulatory and consoling messages flooded newspapers and social media. Advocacy organizations and cancer survivors commended her honesty and emphasized the beneficial effects it had on those who were following in her footsteps. Her cool, collected tone was a role model for many, showing them how to talk about disease without being dramatic or frightening. The princess had produced a moment of national camaraderie in addition to marking a personal milestone by announcing the completion of her treatment. There was cautious hope over her comeback to public appearances after this revelation. The palace did clarify, though, that Catherine will gradually return to work. Through media sites, medical professionals also offered their opinions, stating that even though chemotherapy may be done, the healing process could take weeks or even months. Fatigue, in particular, is one of the side effects that frequently persists long after the last therapy session. Nevertheless, there was no denying the sensation of advancement. In an attempt to re-establish a relationship with one of her longtime clients, Catherine was spotted discreetly visiting a nearby hospice in late September. The organization welcomed the gift and praised her for meeting with staff and patients, even though no official photos were made public. It was a modest but significant step forward, proof that the princess was subtly re-establishing her connection to the causes that were important to her. Kensington Palace revealed that Catherine would resume a limited schedule of public appearances in the last quarter of the year when fall descended on the United Kingdom. She and Prince William visited families impacted by the horrific tragedy in Southport in early October, which was the first of these. Catherine's attendance was significant and symbolic, and the visit was a part of a larger royal initiative to promote underprivileged communities. She participated completely despite her obvious recovery, listening, consoling, and reminding everyone of her unwavering dedication to public service. It said volumes that she decided to make this her first official engagement after treatment. Catherine decided to use her recent experience to provide empathy by spending time with families experiencing trauma, grief, and adversity, rather than going to a formal appearance or ceremony. The public was aware that this signaled a change in the princess's approach to her position. She had continued to perform her job despite her illness. It had, if anything, strengthened her bond with the work's emotional heart. Her schedule stayed light but significant during the next few weeks. She resumed meetings with organizations that she had long supported, including those related to family support, early children development, and mental health. A sense of realism framed each look. She was not under any pressure to give a polished response, nor was there any attempt to do so. Supporters who respected her grace and strength welcomed her sincere and experience-based approach. During this time, Prince William was by her side constantly. The pair's combined appearances demonstrated their solidarity as lovers as well as royals. They strengthened their relationship and dedication to their profession by moving through engagements together and frequently communicating with the same goal. It became evident that this episode had changed rather than diminished their public responsibilities. Presence, substance, and service were now prioritized over visibility alone. Future performances were not overly announced by the palace. Since each event was only confirmed a few days in advance, Catherine's energy and recuperation could be accommodated. The public reacted to her appearance with encouragement and enthusiasm. She was frequently met with cheers from the crowd, and supportive comments kept pouring through Kensington Palace's official channels. Princess Catherine has participated in a few low-key meetings and trips before the end of November. Although none of the events made the news, they all conveyed the same message. Her homecoming was being handled carefully and not under duress. Following her health and purpose, she was re-establishing her public life at her own pace. The royal family got ready for the holiday season in December. Catherine joined senior members of the royal family in Sandringham for the Christmas service. It was a small yet important moment. She seemed calm and assured as she stood with Prince William and their kids, grinning as she welcomed the public and took good wishes. For many, this was the end of a year filled with courage, uncertainty, and healing. Even yet, the princess didn't turn her attention to herself. She emphasized appreciation for family, support, and the ongoing efforts of the numerous organizations she represents in her few public statements throughout the season. She had presented her trip as one that many individuals go through in silence on a daily basis, rather than as something remarkable. Many people were still moved by her humility as much as by her bravery. One thing was clear as the year drew to a close. Princess Catherine's comeback to the spotlight did not mean a return to the status quo. Experience, resiliency, and a fresh appreciation for the importance of every moment defined the start of a new chapter. There was a subtle but noticeable sensation of rejuvenation with the beginning of the new year. Practically precisely 1 year had passed since Princess Catherine's initial surgery in January of 2250, when she unwittingly began a journey that would test and transform her on practically every level. The limits of individual fortitude, privacy, and civic responsibility had been put to the test the year before. However, there was cautious optimism about the Princess of Wales and her advancements as the royal calendar started to take shape for the upcoming months. Princess Catherine paid a visit to London's Royal Marsden Hospital in the middle of January. The media had not been informed in advance of the visit, but Kensington Palace subsequently verified it with a brief statement and pictures. She had received a lot of her care at this facility, so the visit had two functions. On the one hand, it gave her a chance to express gratitude to the medical staff for their support, and on the other, it represented a turning point in her journey. She met with patients, nurses, and physicians for more than an hour when she was at the hospital. Her talks were said to be intimate and heartfelt. Later, the staff revealed that Catherine had openly discussed her story and encouraged people undergoing cancer treatment. Despite being subtle, the visit was one of the most important since her diagnosis. It completed the circle of her story by taking her back to the location where the most difficult part of her struggle had taken place, in addition to her public role. The subsequent announcement only served to heighten the intensity of the event. Princess Catherine said that she had achieved remission in a little video that was made public following the visit. She expressed gratitude for her care team, the public's overwhelming support, and the strength she had derived from her family. Speaking quietly, she talked about the months of uncertainty, the side effects of treatment, and how much relief it was to hear no evidence of disease. Many people were delighted to hear the news. Messages of relief, admiration, and sincere congratulations were sent by well-wishers from all around the nation and the world in the hours following the release of her film. Not only for Catherine and her family, but also for everyone who had closely followed her tale and found courage in her candor, the announcement marked a turning point for many. The princess was in remission, according to the palace, but they took care to control expectations over her schedule. She was still recovering, and although she felt well enough to return to some of her responsibilities, her schedule would still be flexible. Meaningful interactions that are conducted carefully and without pressure would remain the main focus. Princess Catherine's public visibility steadily grew in late January and early February. She went back to meetings with some of her longtime supporters, such as family support, mental health, and children's welfare organizations. These causes, which had long served as the foundation of her public work, now held new significance for her. She occasionally brought up her sickness experience in conversations with program participants and charity officials, not to put herself at the center, but to highlight the value of empathy, fortitude, and early intervention. During these interactions, observers noticed a noticeable change in tone. Even though the princess had always been recognized for her cool-headedness, her comments now had a more intimate resonance. Her appearance was no longer just that of a working royal. Rather, it was that of someone who had survived a private health problem while playing a highly visible position and had come out on the other side with even more compassion. Prince William also returned to his regular schedule of public duties during this time. He now proceeded with fresh intensity after spending a large portion of the previous year modifying his calendar to give Catherine and their kids priority. Nevertheless, the pair persisted in appearing together whenever they could. The public particularly valued these moments because they strengthened the spirit of solidarity that had gotten them through the most trying months. The Prince and Princess of Wales took part in a public engagement focused on cancer awareness at the beginning of March. A national health charity organized the event, which brought together families, healthcare professionals, and survivors to exchange experiences and ideas for better care. In her succinct yet impactful address, Catherine discussed the need of early detection and the emotional fortitude needed to face disease. Her comments were commended for being genuine and unpretentious. She spoke as someone who had experienced the truth of dread and uncertainty rather than as a queen. Her public persona somewhat changed as a result of the incident. No longer merely a prospective queen consort, Catherine had emerged as a symbol of strength and hope for countless others who had endured comparable struggles. Once necessary during a time of public speculation, her candor has now transformed into advocacy. This support was never explicitly stated. She made no claims that her experience was typical of all cancer sufferers or that she was a spokeswoman for them. Rather, her message was respectful and grounded, acknowledging the diversity of life experiences and the universal value of empathy, support, and ongoing awareness. Kensington Palace issued a brief statement detailing the princess's forthcoming commitments as spring drew near. These might involve roundtable talks with medical professionals, school mental health initiatives, and visits to early childhood development programs. The statement restated that even though she was feeling better, she would still carefully balance her duties. This openness regarding her continuous recuperation guaranteed public comprehension and assisted in avoiding the kind of conjecture that had previously dominated her absence. The family kept up their routine at home during this period. When royal duties permitted, the couple prioritized spending time with their children, and Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis resumed their regular school schedules. According to reports, the children had handled the past year exceptionally well, in large part because of the family's stability and openness. Their parents had made sure they knew what was going on without making them feel afraid by providing them with age-appropriate information. Support from extended family also contributed behind the scenes. When Catherine required assistance with childcare and household chores, Carol and Michael Middleton continued to be a silent source of support. The princess's capacity to rest and recuperate was greatly aided by this robust familial network. The anniversary of Catherine's first operation passed without much fuss as March progressed. Although the date was not formally commemorated by the palace, observers recognized it as a silent milestone. The adventure had been underway for a year, 12 months of progress, hardship, and uncertainty. Compared to the previous year, the last few weeks of the first quarter felt very different. The feeling of tense waiting had vanished. Rather, there was a continuous, peaceful forward motion. In addition to making a comeback to the public eye, Princess Catherine did it on her own terms, driven by her mission, family, and health. The video for today has now come to an end. Make sure to see the other videos on the channel if you've followed us this far.